Previously, I had naively believed the worst a man could face on his wedding day was a case of nerves. It turned out, the true nadir was to be rendered utterly insignificant. The day this stark realization dawned upon me, I was perched on the edge of our dining table in our shared apartment, meticulously sifting through the final wedding expenses. My laptop lay open, the digital receipts arrayed across the screen like silent, damning pronouncements. $1,200 for Sienna's cousin's flights, the non-refundable deposit for the post-wedding terrace soiree, hotel blockages, personalized favors, all under my name. Not once had I uttered a complaint. Never had I asked Sienna to split a single bill. I operated under the delusion that love meant shouldering the burden if you were capable, and I was. I helm a logistics consulting firm that has carved out a respectable niche. My lifestyle is modest, my investments prudent, and my financial affairs deliberately understated. This, I now understood, was my cardinal error. My quietude had bred their contempt, leading them to believe I was inconsequential. Sienna floated into the room, a vision in a gossamer ivory silk robe, her phone glued to her ear, a melodious laugh escaping her lips at some shared jest from a friend. She leaned in, bestowing a fleeting kiss on my cheek, a gesture as perfunctory as tossing a coin into a wishing well, before gliding towards the refrigerator for a refreshment. "Oh, by the way," she tossed off with casual indifference, "I've added a few more names to the after-party guest list. Just some people from way back." My gaze lifted slowly. Who exactly? She took a languid sip of her mango juice. "Don't be such a stick in the mud. Just Carter and Kellen. It's been ages, they're harmless." Carter, her ex-husband. Kellen, the former flame who once drunkenly crashed her birthday and instigated a brawl at the door. "You invited your ex-husband to our wedding after-party?" I inquired, setting aside my laptop with a heavy thud. "It's not a wedding party," she corrected, her tone dismissive. "It's just a celebration. Casual vibes." The air in the room seemed to thicken, to ice over, but she remained oblivious. Silence hung heavy as I simply stared at her. She wasn't jesting. There was no suppressed giggle about to erupt, no playful deception lurking beneath the surface. Just Sienna, idly swirling the straw in her drink, as if she hadn't just casually upended my world. "Do you think that's appropriate?" I finally managed, the words feeling brittle. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Malik," she sighed dramatically, waving a dismissive hand. "Lighten up. Carter's remarried, and Kellen's just popping in for a drink. Honestly, you're being incredibly insecure right now." Insecure. The word landed like a physical blow, a stinging slap across the face, not because it held any truth, but because of its sheer laziness. The easiest deflection, twisting a man's discomfort back onto himself. As if my reaction wasn't to a blatant act of disrespect, but merely a figment of my overactive imagination. I stood there, momentarily stunned, but before I could formulate a response, her mother breezed in, Darlene West, the reigning queen of passive-aggressive compliments and thinly veiled barbs. She entered clutching a Bloomingdale's bag, radiating an air of smug superiority that could make even the wealthiest feel impoverished. "Still fussing about the guest list?" Darlene drawled, barely glancing in my direction. "Honestly, it's just a party. If you don't like it, we'll just give your +1 to Jamie." I blinked, the name unfamiliar yet unsettling. "Jamie?" A condescending smirk played on her lips. "Jamie Lell. You remember him? Sienna's childhood sweetheart. Such a charming boy. He's flying in." I stood rooted to the spot, but something within me fractured. Not shattered, but a hairline crack. The first barely perceptible fissure on a windshield before it spiderwebs and consumes everything. It was in that precise moment that the chilling truth crystallized. I wasn't the groom. I was a prop, an extra in their twisted little production. Sienna giggled, a light tinkling sound that grated on my nerves, and nestled against her mother. "Oh, darling, it's just a bit of fun. Relax, relax." Another dismissive word, like insecure, hollow, sharp, designed to silence. I said nothing more, just offered a slow, deliberate nod. Yes, just fun. That night, I found myself exiled to the guest room, sleep eluding me for hours. She likely assumed I was sulking, needing space. She failed to grasp that I was meticulously dismantling everything. Because a man can overlook much, but there exists a breaking point, a threshold beyond which he either explodes or simply vanishes. I chose the latter. Every petty slight, every condescending remark played on repeat in my mind. Her praising my discipline while simultaneously mocking my aversion to crowds. Darlene's casual inquiry about whether my job entailed typing all day. Their barely concealed smirks when I suggested a modest ceremony, only to be met with demands for a rooftop terrace adorned with imported orchids and a cascading champagne fountain. Each time, I had yielded, silently. I hadn't wanted to be difficult. I craved peace. It turned out, offering peace to those who held you in contempt was merely teaching them to treat your presence as silence. The following morning, Sienna hummed a cheerful tune as she dressed, twirling in a new white cocktail dress she planned to wear to the after-party. "What do you think, darling?" I watched her reflection in the mirror. She was objectively beautiful, but beauty devoid of kindness is like a mansion without warmth. Cold, empty, impressive, yet uninhabitable. "Lovely," I replied, my voice flat. She barely registered the tone. Already engrossed in her phone, her smile softened, her eyes flickered across the screen. Then, noticing my gaze, she abruptly locked it. I already knew the name, Carter. Possibly Kellen, too. It was then that my quiet planning commenced. No raised voices, no hurled accusations, no desperate pleas. Just the deliberate act of reaching for my phone and opening a new note. The title, "The Price of Being the Punchline." And beneath it, I began to list. Not memories, not feelings, but stark, cold numbers. Objective figures. If they perceived me as a mere prop, I would show them the cost of building a stage without me. The apartment hummed with a strained quiet, punctuated only by the occasional chirping notifications of a group chat and the shrill bursts of laughter that followed. I stood in the hallway, just outside the bedroom door, my back pressed against the cool wall. This wasn't accidental eavesdropping. It was a deliberate act of listening, a necessity born of a growing unease. Something within me whispered that if I continued to feign ignorance of their disrespect, I would drown in it. And today, drowning was not on my agenda. The door wasn't even fully closed, a sliver of light spilling onto the carpet. Sienna sat cross-legged on the bed, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of her phone screen. On a video call were her three closest confidants, Carrie, June, and Naya. The very trio who had tittered through our engagement dinner when Darlene had mistakenly referred to me as Martin, her accountant. They were guffawing loudly, sipping drinks, oblivious or perhaps indifferent to my presence just beyond the thin barrier of the door. Carrie's voice, sharp and distinct, cut through the air first. "Wait, Carter's coming too? You didn't tell me that!" Sienna's tinkling laughter followed. "Yep, and Kellen as well. Why not let them all witness my radiant glow?" "Oh my God," Na shrieked. "This is going to be a circus," June chimed in, her tone laced with amusement. "And her Malik will just stand there like a lost substitute teacher while the real lineup of men parades through." The words stung, but what followed twisted my gut into a knot of cold dread. Sienna's voice, laced with a smug amusement, drifted through the crack. "He'll be fine. He's used to being in the background. Malik's quiet. You could replace him with a coat rack and no one would notice." A fresh wave of laughter erupted, and I stood frozen, my fists clenching involuntarily. Yet I remained immobile. No angry outburst, no flung phone. Just a silent vigil, my breath shallow, watching the shifting shadows beneath the door. Then, Darlene's voice, smooth and laced with condescension, joined the chorus. I hadn't even realized she was part of the call. Honestly, Malik isn't awful. Just invisible, like unsalted butter. More laughter. I've started calling him Mr. Nobody this past week, she continued, and Sienna nearly choked on her drink with mirth. That's brutal, June chuckled, but true. Sienna didn't defend me. She didn't object. She laughed the loudest. And in that moment, my surprise evaporated. When the call ended, I retreated silently to the kitchen. I sat at the table, reopening my laptop, and at the bottom of the page, in small, precise print, I wrote, "They don't see me as a man. They see me as an accessory." She emerged a little later, clad in one of my oversized shirts, as if it were some endearing jest. She carried that post-gossip glow. I sat on the sofa, feigning attention to client emails, my mind a whirlwind of cold calculation. She plopped down beside me, nudging me playfully with her knee. "You're awfully quiet today," she observed. "I have a lot on my mind," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. She leaned in, pressing a perfunctory kiss to my cheek, the kind a parent bestows to placate a child. "You're overthinking things again. It'll all be perfect." Perfect. That word again. To her, perfect meant aesthetically pleasing, polished, but it bore no relation to what was right, to what was real. I watched her drift away, humming and tapping away on her phone again. Likely Carter, possibly Kellen, perhaps both. That night, I sought refuge in the guest room and retrieved a folder I hadn't touched in months. Inside lay legal documents. My initial prenuptial agreement, the one she had scoffed at and dissuaded me from pursuing. I hadn't pressed the issue. I hadn't wanted to begin our marriage with discord. But now I saw that the discord had merely been disguised in floral arrangements and silk napkins. I began to meticulously document everything. Every receipt, every name on the guest list, every casual barb that chipped away at my sense of self-worth. I video-recorded credit card transactions related to wedding expenses. I photographed the RSVP list she had left open on the computer, Carter and Kellen's names prominently highlighted. I emailed it all to myself. Subject line, "Just in case." You see, I wasn't the type to erupt in anger. I wasn't one for slamming doors or crafting vitriolic social media posts, but I was the type who observed, remembered, and prepared. The following day, Darlene arrived unannounced, armed with fabric swatches for centerpieces and a bottle of wine. She likely expected me to foot the bill. I opened the door, my expression carefully blank. "Oh, good," she chirped, breezing past me. "You're home. I need to ask about the shuttle for Jamie. His flight gets in late." I stared at her, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "Jamie?" "Yes, darling Jamie Lell. You remember? Sienna's little childhood crush. I'm bringing him in. She deserves to have people around her who truly know her." "She has me," I stated flatly. She blinked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "Of course, dear. But you know, someone needs to keep things lively when the groom gets cold feet." She offered a conspiratorial wink, a gesture meant to convey humor, but we both knew it was anything but. She held no respect for me. She barely tolerated me. In her eyes, I was merely the financier of her daughter's fairy tale, and once the check cleared, I would be written out of the story, like a forgotten prologue. That night, I began to search for flights. I typed in Santorini, the destination of our original honeymoon plans. My cursor hovered over the book button, but I didn't click. Not yet. I needed one more push, one final confirmation that everything I suspected was tragically true. It arrived the following morning. Sienna asked me to zip up her new dress. It was sleek, white, and modern. She looked stunning in it. But as I stood behind her, my gaze caught her reflection in the mirror, and my eyes fell upon her phone screen. A message was open. "Kellen, are you sure he won't freak out?" Sienna. "Please, Malik won't even notice. He's too busy supporting." As she turned and smiled at me, I finished zipping the dress, my silence a heavy shroud. she thought I hadn't seen. She thought she was in control. She had no idea that the man she considered invisible was about to become someone they could no longer ignore. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot I always occupied, but something within me had shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak. It was something colder, sharper, a clarity that left no room for denial. I took a deep breath, opened my laptop, and scrolled past the page where I had begun tracking wedding expenses. This time I titled the document, The List. Not just costs, not just facts, evidence, a timeline, a blueprint, a plan. I started from the beginning. Venue deposit, $12,000, paid from my account in early February. I remembered because Sienna had insisted on the rooftop view overlooking the harbor. It has to be unforgettable, she'd declared, and I had agreed. I just hadn't known it was me who would later be trying desperately to forget it. Catering, $9,800. Vegan, gluten-free, organic fusion nonsense. Neither of us usually ate like that, but she wanted to impress her mother's clients. Darlene had made it abundantly clear that the wedding was also a networking opportunity. I recalled nodding silently, signing the check, a small part of me wilting as they debated appetizers with names that sounded like chemical formulas. Hotel block, $5,400. I had covered rooms for her aunts, uncles, and 2 cousins who hadn't seen her since middle school. One of whom, I would later learn, had inadvertently reconnected her with Kellen. Flights for her Arizona cousins, $2,600. Bridesmaid dresses, which she had assured me she would handle, yet my card had been mysteriously charged, $3,200, florist deposit, $1,800, DJ, $2,000. Even the favors, personalized champagne flutes etched with Sienna and Malik Forever, $150. Forever. The word seared. Page after page, I continued the meticulous accounting. When I tallied the final figures, it came to just over $46,000, excluding the ring. And every single check, every email confirmation, every debit, all from my accounts. She hadn't even offered to contribute. Not once. I stared at the total, feeling not pride or anger, but a profound sense of foolishness. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about the casual entitlement, the unspoken expectation that I would simply provide, as if my sole worth lay in being a wallet in a suit. An hour later, Sienna floated into the room, another dress in hand. This one wasn't white, but a vibrant emerald green with a daring slit up the side. She twirled in the living room, her hair catching the light in slow-motion perfection. "Darling, what do you think?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I looked up from my laptop. "For what?" "The after party," she beamed. "I want to look unforgettable, especially with Carter and Kellen arriving. Isn't it hilarious that all the men I've ever dated will be in the same room?" Hilarious. That word again. I wanted to ask her if she truly believed me to be so utterly naive. Did she honestly think a man would stand by, smiling benignly, while she played some twisted game of musical chairs with her past lovers, treating them like props in a reality reunion show? But I said nothing. I simply nodded. She took the nod as approval, as encouragement. Then she drifted towards the mirror, her thumbs already flying across her phone screen. I didn't need to peer over her shoulder to know who it was. Carter, the ex-husband who, she claimed, still held her in high regard. Kellen, the former flame who used to drunkenly call her at 2 a.m. when we first started dating. Jamie, the childhood sweetheart her mother had resurrected like some prized trophy. I watched her gaze at her reflection, admiring her own radiance. But I no longer saw the woman I had fallen in love with. I saw an actress rehearsing for a role I hadn't auditioned for. Her face was still beautiful, but it held a rehearsed quality, a careful curation devoid of genuine emotion. Respect, honesty, care. I left the room without a word, retreating to the guest room and powering on my laptop. I duplicated every receipt, saved every screenshot I had taken, every message, every call log, every bank statement. I backed it all up onto an external hard drive, which I then secreted away in a sock drawer. Then I opened a blank spreadsheet and began to meticulously categorize each transaction. Each row told a part of the story. Row 12, catering deposit paid Oro 37XXX, $4,000 Malik's card. Row 22, bridesmaid dresses paid Oro 319XXXX, $3,200 Malik's card. Row 35, Sienna's second dress paid Oro 402XXXX, $1,600 Malik's card. And beneath it all, I wrote, no joint financial contributions, no signed prenuptial agreement, no transparency. Later that evening, she asked me to accompany her to the final venue walkthrough. She was wearing that emerald green dress. I told her I had work to do. She pouted but didn't insist. That told me everything. She wasn't trying to include me. She was merely keeping me close enough to fund the illusion, and far enough to ensure her performance went unhindered. While she was gone, I took another calculated step. I emailed every single vendor, the venue manager, the catering company, the hotel, the DJ, the florist, and requested copies of the signed contracts. I specified that I needed confirmation that my name was the sole one listed. Each responded within the hour. Every single contract, without exception, was in my name alone. I stared at those emails as if they were blueprints for a building I was about to demolish, and in that moment, I knew exactly how this would end. Not with a bang, not with bitterness, but with a quiet, deliberate, and irreversible severing. That night, as I sat hunched over my laptop, Sienna returned from the walkthrough, practically glowing. She kicked off her heels and slipped into bed as if everything were perfect. "You'll love the lighting," she murmured, her voice dreamy. "It's like a movie." I nodded. "Sounds magical." She turned onto her side, already tapping away on her phone again, her smile obscured by the darkness. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was staring at the ceiling, already strategizing my next move, because a man can endure countless indignities before he either breaks or vanishes. And I had no intention of breaking. I sat in the dim glow of my laptop screen, the hours on the wall clock ticking silently behind me, row 43. Outside, the city hummed its perpetual song, but within my apartment, everything felt suspended, poised on the precipice of something irrevocable. This wasn't just another sleepless night. This was the night I made a decision from which there would be no turning back. The final straw had long since been laid. The list was complete, the receipts documented, the screenshots saved. My instincts, once whispers, were now a deafening roar. And I refused to be a willing extra in the twisted drama Sienna and Darlene were directing. I opened my banking app and navigated to our joint credit account. It was the card we used for everyday expenses, groceries, dinners out, small purchases. But all the wedding costs had been meticulously routed through my personal accounts. This had been deliberate. I had always maintained my financial boundaries, but now I needed to fortify them against her. I tapped Manage Access, scrolled down, and removed both users, Sienna and yes, Darlene. Somehow, she had sweet-talked Sienna into granting her access 6 months prior, claiming it was only for emergencies. I should have shut it down then. But I hadn't. I had been trying to be a good fiancé. Now, I understood that being good to the wrong people simply taught them how to exploit you better. With a few taps, I locked the account, set up alerts for any activity, and changed the password. Then I opened another folder. It contained a draft I hadn't touched in over a year. A separation agreement. It had been drawn up after our first significant argument with Sienna, one of those drawn-out, tearful battles about trust and finances. I had had it drafted by a lawyer, just in case. We had moved past it, or rather, I had thought we had. I had never deleted the file. I composed an email to Bryant Knox, my lawyer and a longtime friend. The subject line was simple. Activate. The body read, "Bryant, I'm done pretending. Attaching everything you'll need. Please expedite the filing. I'll be unreachable for a while." We'll sign everything necessary before I leave. You know where to send it." Then I attached every screenshot, every receipt, every message, every call log, the group chat with Sienna's friends mocking me, the message from Kellen asking if I would freak out, the receipt from the dress shop, charging my card without my knowledge. I hit send, and then opened a new browser tab and typed in the name of the place Sienna and I had once dreamed of visiting together, Santorini, our honeymoon destination. We were supposed to sail on catamarans, eat fresh seafood by the water, and wake up to sunlight streaming through whitewashed curtains in a cliffside villa overlooking the Aegean. But that future had been quietly incinerated by every dismissive laugh and condescending remark. I selected a departure date, the morning after the after-party. One way, no return. I chose a window seat, paid in full, and downloaded the confirmation. Then, I did the thing I had been dreading. I opened the wedding contracts, one by one, and began to cancel them. The venue was first. I called after business hours, leaving a message, and followed up with an email. "Please consider this formal notification of immediate cancellation for the event booked under my name. Kindly confirm the cancellation and refund as per the terms of our agreement." The DJ was next, then the hotel block. I spoke to the manager directly. The florist, I instructed to donate the arrangements to a local nursing home. I even canceled the private airport transfer Darlene had insisted upon for her VIP guests. Even when she texted me around 10 that night, saying she might be running late, I replied, "No rush, I'm keeping busy." She sent a heart emoji. That was it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at that small red heart on the screen. It felt so hollow now, a digital sticker plastered over a foundation of lies. I got up and poured myself a glass of water. Standing in the kitchen, I surveyed the apartment. The framed photos, the wine rack, the his and hers towel set we had bought 6 months ago. It all felt like a stage set, as if I had been living inside someone else's carefully constructed dream. But I was done playing my part. There's something you come to understand after years of being the reliable, quiet one. People mistake your silence for softness. They forget that stillness often signifies someone listening, learning, planning. I hadn't yelled when Sienna belittled me. I hadn't argued when Darlene joked about replacing me with Jamie. I hadn't fought when they turned my love into a source of amusement. But now, they were about to witness what a quiet exit truly looked like. I pulled out a suitcase and began to pack. Not for a vacation, not for a break, but to disappear. 2 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, my passport, laptop charger, documents, headphones, sunglasses. I left behind anything that wasn't essential because I had no intention of returning. When Sienna finally came home around 1 in the morning, I was already in bed, feigning sleep. She pressed a kiss to my forehead and whispered, "Big day tomorrow, darling." Then she snuggled in beside me, as if everything were perfectly normal. She had no idea the hotel was already processing cancellations. She didn't know the catering company had deleted the order. She was blissfully unaware that her after-party would have no music, no champagne, no lights. I lay still, my breathing slow and even, listening to her drift off to sleep. I pictured her reaction the next day, the confusion, the missed calls, the dawning panic in her voice as nothing materialized, as the empty space where her fiancé should have been became a gaping void. Then, I pictured myself, settling into my seat on the plane to Santorini, headphones on, a glass of wine in hand, free. And I smiled. Because people like Sienna and Darlene only understand the value of something once it's gone. And I was already gone. The day of the after-party dawned like a curtain falling on a play that never deserved an audience. I woke early, before the sun had even begun to paint the sky. Sienna still slept beside me, her back to me, her mouth slightly open, her phone clutched loosely in her hand. Even in slumber, she couldn't quite let it go. I sat up slowly, watched her for a long moment, then rose. No goodbye. There was nothing left to say. My bag was already packed. 6 hours until my flight, 40 minutes to the airport. But I wasn't rushing. I had time. Time to disappear properly. I moved through the apartment one last time, touching nothing. No note, no drama, no explanations. Let them figure it out. That was the point. By 9 a.m., I was gone. Out the door, down the elevator, into the car I had quietly booked the night before. As the city moved around me, I watched it pass by like someone observing the final scenes of a movie they had already seen far too many times. I felt no nerves, no sadness, just a profound sense of calm. At the airport, I checked in, passed through security, and made my way to the departure lounge. I found a quiet corner, ordered a glass of red wine, and opened my laptop. I refreshed my email. The notifications had already begun to trickle in. The venue manager had sent a cancellation confirmation, along with a polite apology for the unexpected change of plans. The hotel followed suit. Room reservations canceled, and staff instructed to inform guests that the group event was no longer taking place. The DJ had messaged, slightly bewildered but respectful, confirming he was no longer needed and hoping everything was all right. It was all unraveling quietly, efficiently, exactly as I had planned, and Sienna still had no idea. My phone vibrated. 10:12 a.m. Sienna. Hey babe, where did you disappear to this morning? Getting cold feet? Haha. Text me. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, the messages continued. 10:29 a.m. Sienna. You're not answering. Are you okay? You left without your wallet. 10:42 a.m. Darlene. We're at the venue. The doors are locked. Where is everyone? I took a slow sip of my wine and waited. 10:53 a.m. June, the bridesmaid. The hotel said the after party is canceled? What's going on? 11:10 a.m. Sienna. Malik, are you serious? This isn't funny. My hair's done. My makeup's done. The girls are freaking out. Call me. Then the calls started. I declined the first one. Then another. Then another. 12:04 p.m. Darlene. You are such a child. You're ruining Sienna's moment. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate us? You'll regret this. Mark my words. I finally put my phone down, the constant vibrations becoming tiresome. Let them talk. Let them rage. The real twist was that they weren't angry I was gone. They were angry I was gone before they were finished using me. I opened Belle's messages again. Me. Thanks for keeping me in the loop. Belle. Of course. I told Sienna not to play games with you. She wouldn't listen. She treated you like a sponsor, not a partner. Me. She thought I would stay silent. She forgot that the power was mine all along. Belle. The best part? Sienna posted in the group chat earlier. This after party is going to be legendary. All the men who have ever loved me will see me shine. She attached a screenshot. I saved it for you. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. That phrase would be useful for Bryant's legal strategy. Let them keep talking. Every word they uttered was just another piece of my defense. By 2 in the afternoon, I was boarding my flight. First class, seat 1A. I settled in, closed my eyes, and leaned back as the engine began its soft rumble beneath the cabin floor. The world outside the plane could have been ablaze, and I wouldn't have cared. I no longer owed anything to the people who had rendered me invisible. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of expectation. I didn't feel the need to hold back. I wasn't waiting to be seen. I wasn't hoping to be chosen. I had chosen myself. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I pulled out my journal and wrote, "They planned a spectacle. I canceled the theater. Now they stand on an empty stage, with no lights, no audience, and no script." And I smiled again. Because this wasn't revenge, it was liberation. Somewhere over the Atlantic, I finally slept a deep, Dreamless, uninterrupted sleep. When I woke, a flight attendant was gently touching my shoulder, asking if I would like breakfast. I declined. I wasn't hungry, not for food anyway. I craved silence, distance, a space where I could breathe without someone else's ego consuming all the air. As the plane descended over the lights of Athens, my phone flickered back to life. 37 missed calls, all from Sienna. Another 12 from Darlene. Several from unfamiliar numbers, likely Carrie, Na, or even Jamie, wondering why he had flown across the country to be a glorified extra at a non-existent after-party. I ignored them all. But Belle's name flashed across the screen with a message just before we landed. Belle. It's a bloodbath. Darlene is calling everyone traitors. Carter bailed. Kellen posted something cryptic about being too real for fake parties. Jamie took a cab back to the airport and left without saying a word. I've never seen anything like it, but they still haven't said your name out loud. It's like they're trying to pretend you never existed. I stared at that message longer than I intended. There was a certain poetry to it. After all the times they had laughed behind my back, all the endless jokes about my quiet presence, they were now treating me like a ghost. They thought by erasing me, they could save face, but it only exposed them further. I landed in Santorini at 3:07 p.m. local time. The heat embraced me like an old friend. The Aegean Sea glittered in the distance, as if trying to tell me something, and I was finally ready to listen. A driver waited for me in the arrivals hall, holding a sign with my name. "Mr. Turner," he said, offering a warm smile. "Welcome." I hadn't heard my name spoken with such genuine respect in weeks. The hotel was perched high on the cliffs, the whitewashed walls gleaming under the sun, the terraces shaded by billowing canvas awnings. My room overlooked the caldera, the dormant volcano slumbering in the sea. I stepped onto the balcony, exhaled, and for the first time in a long time, felt the weight lift from my chest. As I unpacked, my phone vibrated again. "Sienna, please talk to me. Please." Another message followed quickly. "Sienna, I don't even care about the party anymore. I just want to understand why you would humiliate me like this." I didn't reply. Her regret wasn't for how she had treated me. It was for being caught. Then an email arrived from Darlene. Subject: "You owe us an explanation." I didn't open it. I forwarded it directly to Bryant. A few minutes later, my lawyer called. His tone was calm, but I could hear the wry amusement in his voice. "Just received an interesting email," Bryant said. "And by the way, those screenshots you sent, the group chat, Kellen's messages, gold, emotional manipulation, financial abuse, and evidence of public humiliation. This isn't just a separation anymore. This is a fortified wall." "Good," I said, my voice steady. "Let's finish it. File a full divorce petition on Monday." His reply was immediate, laced with professional certainty. "They don't have a leg to stand on. Everything was in your name, including the canceled contracts. As for damages, let them bark all they want, but unless they can prove breach of contract, which they can't, they'll get nothing. You booked a party. You had every right to cancel it." "What about the ring?" I asked, a lingering tendril of obligation. Bryant chuckled dryly. "Leased, returned, receipts documented. You're a meticulous man, Malik." A faint smile touched my lips. I had good teachers. A beat of silence. "You holding up okay over there?" "I will be," I said, the words carrying a quiet resolve. "Just returning a different man." We hung up. I powered off my phone, laid it on the bedside table, and left it there. No more vibrations, no more noise, just the gentle caress of the breeze and the rhythmic murmur of the waves below. The next few days were dedicated to the quiet act of rediscovering myself. I woke without the weight of expectation pressing down on me. I wandered the cobblestone streets with no agenda, no need to explain my destination. I sat alone in sun-drenched plazas, the world around me too beautiful for words. I ate fresh fish, seasoned with lemon and olives. I drank the local wine, its taste as unhurried as the days. I watched the sunsets paint the sky in fiery hues without the compulsion to capture them on a screen. My journal filled with observations not of pain, not of them, but of a burgeoning inner peace. This, I realized, was what happened when you finally placed yourself first. The need for vengeance dissolved. The anticipation of an apology faded. The desperate urge to prove your worth to those who were willfully blind vanished. Sometime between the third and fourth day, Belle messaged me again. Not to pry, but to check in, a true friend extending a lifeline. Belle, it's a dumpster fire over here. Sienna posted some long, tearful story about you abandoning her without warning, playing the victim card hard. But screenshots are leaking. Carter's cousin went rogue and posted the group chat. People are seeing the truth. I hadn't asked her to keep me informed. She was doing it of her own accord. She had witnessed my quiet unraveling, the slow erosion of my dignity. And now she was holding up a mirror, reminding them all that I hadn't been invisible. I had simply stopped playing the game. The following morning, I took my cappuccino out to the balcony again, the sun just beginning to crest the edge of the cliffs. I opened my journal and wrote a single sentence. I was never the problem. I was the reset button they never expected me to press. After that, there was silence. Even from Sienna. No more calls, no more messages. Just the vast, echoing silence. But not peace. Not for them. Because people like Sienna don't find peace when the spotlight dims. They find panic. And Darlene only knew power through controlling someone else's stage. Without me, there was no production, no lights, no audience. Just her voice, echoing in a room where no one was listening anymore. By the end of that week, I booked another ticket. Not home, to Lisbon. I needed a place to truly begin again. A place where my name held no baggage, where expectations were non-existent, where echoes of the past couldn't cling. Santorini had been an escape. Lisbon would be a genesis. And as I zipped my small suitcase, I realized something profound. I felt no guilt, not even a flicker, because I wasn't running away. I was walking out of a fire I hadn't started, but had every right to extinguish. It was exactly 2 weeks after I landed in Lisbon that the legal fireworks began. Bryant moved with surgical precision. Everything I had sent him, the documents, the messages, the screenshots, the receipts, coalesced into an ironclad case. He didn't just file for divorce. He filed for intentional infliction of emotional distress, backed by irrefutable evidence of financial exploitation. The goal wasn't to punish Sienna, but to etch the truth in legal stone in the hands of the court so that no one, not even Darlene with her condescending smirk, could rewrite the narrative. The papers landed like a thunderclap. I received an email from Bryant. Subject: It's done. The body of his message was succinct. Filed and served. No prenuptial to protect her. All wedding expenses, bookings, and services solely in your name. Her name isn't on a single thing. Their only defense is words, not law. Oh, and Darlene threatened to sue for damages to the event, claims you harmed her reputation by canceling last minute. I forwarded her copies of all the contracts with a quiet satisfaction. Every single one in my name alone. No joint signatures, no shared responsibility. And the ring? Confirmed return. No legal ties. You're clean, Malik. Let them spin their tales. The paper speaks louder. I sat in a cafe near Rossio, my espresso growing cold between my fingers, and read Bryant's email 3 times before closing my laptop. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I simply felt a quiet clarity settle within me. Everything I had silently built to protect myself had worked, because men like me plan while they play along. 2 days later, Belle called. I rarely answered unscheduled calls, but I always made time for her. "Malik, you're trending. she announced the moment I picked up. What? Your story, she elaborated. Someone leaked everything. The group chat screenshots, the guest list, Sienna's "all the men who have ever loved me" quote. It's everywhere. How did it get out? Carter's cousin, Belle explained. He posted it all after Darlene tried to blame him on Facebook. He got pissed and dumped the receipts. It snowballed from there. Unbelievable, she added. It gets better. Sienna's trying to do damage control, but it's backfiring spectacularly. She went live yesterday, crying about being abandoned. But someone leaked a voice note of Darlene laughing about replacing you with Jamie. I leaned back in my chair, the phone pressed loosely against my ear. They're eating each other alive over here, she said. It was then that I realized I didn't need to do anything more. They were dismantling themselves with the very tools they had used to mock me. Fabricated narratives, secret chats, self-serving delusions. It all crumbled under the weight of its own vanity. I had simply been the quiet man who built the stage, and I had simply walked away. Back in the States, Bryant had locked everything down. My assets were untouchable. I had separated them long ago, keeping business finances distinct from personal. Nothing had ever been put in Sienna's name. No joint property, no shared accounts. Even the apartment we had lived in was solely under my lease. There was nothing for them to take. Darlene, in her desperation, tried to contact the vendors, pressuring them to release statements painting me as unstable. But the venue manager refused. He had already spoken to Bryant and signed an NDA. Even the florist posted a story defending me. Some of y'all need to stop playing with kind people. Our client was respectful and straightforward. That's all I'll say. It spread like wildfire. Then came an email from a local news site. Subject: comment on the vanishing groom story. I didn't reply. I had no interest in fanning the flames. The only headlines I cared about were the ones I was writing in my own life. Bryant sent a final update that week. Sienna signed the divorce papers, no contest. Her lawyer likely advised it to avoid a messy trial. I'll send over the final documents for your signature. And one more thing. Darlene's business, West Image Consulting, has lost 5 corporate clients. Apparently, one of them saw the leaked messages and decided to reevaluate their values. Thought you'd find that interesting. I considered this for a moment, not with glee at their misfortune, but with a quiet understanding of how fragile their empire had always been. It hadn't taken violence. It hadn't taken shouting. It had taken the truth. And the truth, I was learning, shattered louder than any act of revenge. I signed the divorce papers sitting at a quiet table in a Lisbon bookstore cafe. No hesitation, no rereading, just the click of the sign button and the send. Then I closed my laptop, sipped my espresso, and watched the trams rattle past on the cobblestone streets. The air smelled of sea salt and citrus. I felt no anger anymore, not a trace, just a profound sense of liberation. A few days later, I received a message from Marcus, an old mutual friend. She's trying to get people to sign character reference letters for her. No one's biting. Too many screenshots, too much truth. I replied simply, let her try. I'm not watching. Because that was the part they had never anticipated. They thought I would be consumed, bitter, watching from the sidelines, waiting for updates, craving closure. But I wasn't. I didn't need closure from people who had never truly opened their hearts. I had found something better, peace, and I was guarding it like gold. In Lisbon, I continued to build. My business thrived remotely, consulting on several global supply chain projects. Long walks through Alfama became routine. Pastel de nata, still warm from the oven, a daily indulgence, and I finally stopped feeling the need to justify how I chose to live. One evening, I found myself on a rooftop bar, watching the city lights twinkle beneath a rose-tinted sky. A street musician's melody drifted up from below. I was dressed casually, alone, no drink in my hand. Just present, and for the first time, that was enough. That was the quiet beauty of walking away the right way. Not with noise, not with malice, but with control. You gained the space to build a life no longer shaped by the hands of those who had once tried to erase you. I knew it wouldn't be long before Sienna tried to rewrite the narrative. It started with a carefully filtered black and white photo of her sitting by a window in her wedding dress, one leg elegantly crossed. She turned off comments for 2 days. The post lingered, gathering sympathy from the handful of people who hadn't seen the leaks. Darlene joined in, reposting the photo on her business consulting page with her own commentary. Some men are never strong enough to handle a powerful woman. My daughter deserved better. It would have stung before. Now I simply shook my head, because the internet had already done what the courts hadn't needed to. It remembered everything. On the 3rd day, someone, Belle said it was likely Carter's ex, Nivea, dumped a full album of screenshots onto a viral gossip page. There was the group chat joking about replacing me with Jamie, the messages between Sienna and Kellen, and, most damningly, an audio recording of Darlene saying, "Even a scarecrow would have been a better groom." At least it wouldn't ask questions. I wasn't tagged. I didn't comment, didn't repost, but I saw it, and I saw the shift. The sympathy on her post curdled into confusion, then anger. People started editing the screenshots into reaction videos. One influencer read her caption aloud, then cut to a split screen of the leaked messages, ending with a sarcastic, "Yeah, she was the victim." Others dug deeper. Someone found the florist's story praising my professionalism. A wedding guest posted a now viral thread detailing the chaos of the non-party and how Sienna had continued to smile like she was in a pageant even after the staff didn't show up. By the end of the week, the tide had turned. She tried to delete the post, but it was too late. The screenshots had taken on a life of their own. I watched not because I cared what happened to her, but because after being invisible for so long, seeing the truth finally take center stage was a quiet form of vindication. And then Belle messaged me again. "Belle, you won't believe this. Darlene's consulting firm just lost their biggest client." Me. "Because of the wedding stuff?" Belle. "Yep, someone sent the screenshots to the CEO. They terminated their contract, released a statement about integrity and values, and now she's having a meltdown. Trying to do damage control on LinkedIn, but it's backfiring." I didn't reply immediately, because I didn't need to. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was simply the truth, echoing louder than any lie. A week later, the wedding magazine that had previously featured Sienna in their bride spotlight quietly updated their website. Her profile was gone. No explanation, no fanfare, just vanished. Even Jamie, the childhood sweetheart turned awkward stand-in, posted something vague but pointed. "Some people love the spotlight so much, they forget they're not the stars." I bookmarked it, not to share, but as a quiet reminder that even those closest to her had seen the mask slip. Meanwhile, in Lisbon, I was moving forward. I stopped checking my phone for updates. I took more walks, wrote less in my journal. I met new people. A photographer named Anna from Porto offered to show me hidden corners of the city. She asked no probing questions about my past, offered no unsolicited advice, just conversation and quiet companionship. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to earn someone's presence. We drank coffee, then dinner, then walked along the Tagus River for 3 hours. She wasn't Sienna. She wasn't anyone I had ever known. And that was the point. She didn't try to outshine me. She didn't make me feel invisible. She simply saw me. One evening, over glasses of Vinho Verde on a rooftop bar, she asked me why I had come to Lisbon. I considered lying, crafting some palatable version of the truth. But instead I said, I was part of something that looked beautiful on the outside, but was rotting on the inside. I left before it poisoned me too. She nodded slowly. "You're not the first man to run. Just one of the few who didn't wait until it was too late." I looked at her and felt something settle in my chest. Not love, perhaps, but something real. That night, lying in bed, I opened the folder of old wedding emails for the first time in weeks. I scrolled through Sienna's initial mood boards, the invitation mock-ups, the guest list. I deleted them all, one by one, not in anger. The last to go was the RSVP list. I saw Jamie Lell's name under VIP, marked with a gold star. I deleted him last. Then I opened my journal, the one Anna had given me, the one that only held stories written after I became myself. I tucked a printed copy of Sienna's email into the back pocket. Then I turned to a new page and wrote, "They built their identity on my silence. The moment I spoke with my actions, the illusion shattered. Now they're scrambling in a reality of their own making. I didn't ruin their story. I simply stopped being a prop in it." The next morning, I woke to another message from Belle. Belle. She sent out some mass apology email to people she may have disappointed. No names, no specifics, just empty words. Looks like even she's starting to face the consequences. Me. Let her. That's her journey now. Belle. You really don't want to reply at all? Me. Nope. I already replied when I left. That was the last time we spoke of it. Because there was nothing left to say. Sienna's show hadn't ended because I yelled or posted. It ended because I refused to stand on a stage that mocked me. And when you take away the spotlight, there's nothing left for the actors to play to. The first time I saw the sun rise over the Tagus River, I didn't think about what I had left behind. I thought about what I had finally made space for. Lisbon had never been part of the original plan. In fact, after Santorini, there had been no plan at all. Just a moment when I looked at the white rooftops and decided I wasn't going back to the version of myself that settled for being a second choice. I wanted to live somewhere my name held no history, where my silence wasn't mistaken for weakness. And for the first time in years, I wanted to live without someone else's narrative framing my own. So, I found a small apartment in Barro Alto. 2 rooms, a sunny balcony, and enough solitude to breathe. I set up my home office in a corner by the window. My clients didn't care where I worked as long as the work got done. And in that freedom, I found something I had never had at home, the permission to exist on my own terms. The days settled into new rhythms, morning runs along the waterfront, afternoon espressos in tucked-away cafes, evenings spent wandering the old districts, the tiles on the buildings whispering stories older than Darlene's fabricated heritage and Sienna's carefully constructed persona. It was simple, and it was mine. I stopped checking social media, stopped tracking the fallout. Belle kept me updated for a while, but even she eventually messaged, "I think you've outgrown this drama, Malik. Let it rot where it fell." And she was right. My curiosity had waned. There was no anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of finality. A month after settling in Lisbon, Anna invited me to her gallery opening. She was quiet but direct, the kind of woman who looked you in the eye when she asked a question. She knew little of my past, only that I had been through something that had taught me resilience. The gallery that evening hummed with quiet laughter and the clinking of wine glasses. Her photographs lined the walls, candid shots of Lisbon's strangers caught in motion, street musicians bathed in soft light, children running through puddles. "This one reminds me of you," she said, gesturing to a photo of a man walking down a narrow alleyway, half in shadow, half in sun. "Why?" I asked. "Because he's walking alone," she said, "but not lost. It's a choice." And for a long moment, I simply looked at the photograph. She didn't know the weight those words carried, but they resonated deeper than any apology Sienna could have ever penned. 2 days later, I signed the final divorce papers over breakfast. Bryant had emailed the last version. I printed them at a nearby shop, signed them in pen, and sent them back without ceremony. It was merely a formality, a punctuation mark at the end of a chapter that no longer required my energy. I didn't cry, didn't drink, didn't call anyone. Instead, I walked to a quiet overlook and watched the boats drift slowly below. I opened my journal, the one I had been writing in since the beginning, and wrote, "I wasn't running from the pain, I was simply ceasing to invite it in." That same day, a small, unmarked package arrived in the mail. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph of Sienna and me from 2 years ago, on a trip to Napa. We looked happy in it, laughing, her head thrown back, my arm around her waist. Beneath it, an unsigned note. He made me laugh without even trying. I just forgot how rare that was. I didn't need a handwriting expert to know who had sent it. I closed the box and set it aside. Not because I was tempted by the past, but because I had nothing left to give that memory. It had faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. You could look at it, but you could never step back into that moment. That night, Anna and I sat on my balcony with a bottle of wine. She told me stories about her father, about growing up in Porto, about learning photography with an old camera that barely focused. "Will you ever go back?" she asked me quietly. "Where?" "To where all of this started." I considered it. The apartment I had left without a word, the after-party that never happened, the people who hadn't noticed my absence until they had no one left to laugh at. "No," I said simply. Everything I needed to know, I had learned by leaving. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. And that was the truth. Lisbon hadn't fixed me. It hadn't erased what had happened, but it had given me what I had lacked, the space to be myself without shrinking. Slowly, over time, I began to let new people into my life. Not quickly, not recklessly, but with a quiet discernment. People who didn't try to reshape me, who didn't see me as a tool. Friends, colleagues, a few clients I met in person who asked about my journey. And instead of rehearsing the pain, I told them the truth. Sometimes, walking away was the bravest thing you could do. I even started volunteering at a local mentorship program, helping young entrepreneurs navigate the logistics of their growing businesses. One of the students asked me one day, "Why are you here? You could be making so much more in New York or London." I smiled and said, "Because here, I'm not a commodity. I'm a person." The answer lingered in my mind long after the session ended. It was the first time I had said it out loud and truly meant it. A few weeks later, Anna brought me a small gift, a leather-bound notebook. "For your next chapter," she said. I opened it, turned past the first blank page, and wrote, "This story no longer begins with betrayal. It begins with choosing myself." It was a rainy afternoon in Lisbon when the final message arrived. I was sitting by the window of my favorite cafe, tucked away beneath a row of ivy-covered buildings, sipping tea and listening to the distant rumble of passing trams. The city had slowed, as it always did when the clouds gathered. I had come to love these quiet moments, the sound of the rain against the glass, the smell of fresh pastries, the feeling of not needing to be anywhere but exactly where I was. My phone vibrated softly on the table, a notification from Bryant. Subject: forwarded. Final email, Sienna West. I hesitated. I hadn't thought about her in days, weeks even. Not in the same way. The pain had dulled, the anger had dissipated. What remained was something else, a detachment. Like the memory of a film you once loved, until you saw how it ended. Still, I opened it. It was a scanned handwritten letter, blue ink on lined paper, the kind you found in a student's notebook. No dramatic flourishes, no perfume, no stickers. Just a simple letter from a woman whose voice I had once known intimately. "Malik, I don't know where you are now. Maybe you've blocked me everywhere. Maybe you'll never even read this. That's okay. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing because I finally see what I refused to see when it mattered. You were kind to me. You loved me with a quiet love that I never appreciated. I used to think love had to be loud, messy, complicated. But you were the opposite. You were steady, you were safe, and I mistook that for weakness. I treated you like a placeholder, like someone who should just be grateful to be in the frame. I let my mother say terrible things. I let my friends mock you, and I laughed when I should have defended you. I see that now. I wanted to shine, but at what cost? I burned everything down just to be in the spotlight. And when you left, I finally understood something terrible. Without you, I had no story. I was just noise. So this isn't a plea. It's not a trap. It's just an acknowledgement. You were right. I didn't respect you. And I paid the price. I hope you're somewhere peaceful. I hope someone is treating you like the main character, not the background. I hope when you wake up, you feel free. Goodbye, Malik. Sienna. I read it once, then again. I waited for something to surface. Anger, sadness, satisfaction. But all I felt was a quiet finality. She wasn't begging, wasn't blaming, and for the first time, wasn't pretending. It was the most honest thing I had received from her in over a year. I tucked the digital letter away in my thoughts and closed my email. There was no need to reply. I walked home in the rain, unhurried, my mind clear of the past. I returned to my apartment, dried off, and took out my journal, the one Anna had given me, the one that only held stories written after I became myself. I tucked the printed copy of the letter into the back pocket. Then I turned to a new page and wrote, "They threw a party. They were the joke. I left, and now they are the punchline." I looked out the window at the gray sky over the city and smiled, not because I had won, but because I was finally finished playing their game. That night, Anna came over. She brought fresh bread, local cheese, and a bottle of wine. We ate on the floor, laughing at nothing in particular, a movie playing softly in the background that we barely watched. She told me about a gallery in Spain that wanted to exhibit her work. I told her I might travel again soon. Maybe Italy, maybe Morocco. We talked like people who didn't need to impress each other, just be seen. After dinner, we sat on the balcony in silence, wrapped in a single blanket, her head resting on my shoulder. "I got a letter today," I said quietly. She didn't ask who it was from. Instead, she looked up at me and asked, "Do you feel lighter?" I considered it. Not just the letter, but everything that had led to it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the decision to leave, the silence, the rebuilding, the quiet victories. "Yes," I said. She nodded, placed her hand over mine, and said, "Good. Then it's over." And she was right. Not because the letter closed the story, but because I no longer needed the story. I was no longer Malik, the man erased from his own wedding celebration. I wasn't the fiancé replaced by a parade of old lovers. I wasn't the silent wallet in the corner, the punchline of a group chat, the man mocked by his own wife's mother. I was Malik Turner, the man who chose himself when no one else would. The man who walked through the fire and kept walking until he reached the sun. And wherever my story took me next, it would begin with one truth. I am not the man they tried to erase. I am the man they will never forget.